This is a very useful slide for demonstrating the basic organization of Hinduism as a religious system. The chart shows significant characteristics of what has been called medieval or classical Hinduism. From Vedic religion developed a social organization of life relating to a social caste system, rites of passage known as life stages, and life goals. Let's take the caste system first. Caste is a system of social stratification or ranking that is also called Varna, which means color. This social ranking largely relates to occupation. Different people do different things. Also related to this ranking are concepts of purity and pollution. Certain jobs are considered cleaner and less defiling than others. Lastly, and less talked about, is color. That is skin color, or what I call color politics. With the confluence of Indo-European and IVC peoples, the former were lighter complected and were stationed higher socially. Although there are hundreds of subcastes called jatis, the four major varnas in order of purity, color, and rank are Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The top three castes are also called scheduled classes. Notice on the chart that above the top three is the statement twice-born Aryan castes. You might recall that Aryan refers to the Indo-Europeans that migrated into North India. Twice-born refers to a rite of passage called the thread ceremony. This refers to a ritual for young boys entering into the first stage of life toward adulthood. Young girls do not participate in this thread ceremony, instead preparing for womanhood within their households. As far as occupation, traditionally the Brahmin caste was responsible for leading and performing religious rituals. This highest caste tended to have the most education. Today, the Brahmin caste would tend to have professional occupations such as doctors, lawyers, or scientists. The Kshatriya caste has traditionally had occupations relating to politics and the military. The third of the scheduled classes, the Vaishyas, perform jobs that would be considered skilled and productive labor. The fourth caste after what was once the dotted line is the Shudra class. Notice what it says above the gray box. This varna and the subcaste that relate to it derive largely from the IVC, hence non-Aryan. When I was first learning about some of the occupations for the four major castes, I was upset that musicians were found at the bottom varna. Many years ago, I was a music major, and I thought it was a bummer that musicians would be so low in caste. Speaking of being a music major, I got my first introduction to a dynamic of caste when I was a student at a music school in Boston. I was a piano major while also playing violin. I struck up a friendship with an Indian student who played Indian classical violin. No one could pronounce his name, so he told us all to just call him G.B. Jacob. Well, he began giving me violin lessons in the Indian classical style. He would take a break and he would stand up from the cross-legged position of this style of playing and begin playing jazz and classical music on his violin. He was very good, so I asked him what his major was at the school. I said to him, "You must be a performance major." He quickly replied in his heavy South Asian accent, "Particularly not. I am a music engineering major." I thought this quite strange because he played so well. Gibi went on to explain that he couldn't say he was a performance major because of his caste. I didn't think much about it then, but when I later learned about Hinduism, I realized new things about my old friend. First of all, one's caste designation is hereditary and designates a great deal about a person's life. G.B. Jacob was obviously a Brahmin traveling so far to a famous school. Furthermore, a Brahmin would go into a professional occupation such as engineering. They could not label themselves as a music performer, as that would be classified within a lower varna. Now, this doesn't mean that musicians are necessarily looked down upon, but that their social station is one of serving. Think of musicians at your favorite coffee shop performing while businessmen or engineers are discussing work matters. Besides occupation, caste classification helps to designate what clothes one tends to wear, who one would marry, what types of foods one eats, and one's social networks. There are also dynamics of purity and pollution in this caste system. The higher the caste, the more pure. This often relates to the types of jobs of each caste. The types of occupations of high castes, such as Brahmins or Kshatriyas, are jobs that are considered more pure. The occupations of a subclass of Shudras, traditionally called outcasts or untouchables, are considered polluting or defiling. One can imagine the materials one must manage when sweeping streets or making leather. Even barbers and gardeners must deal with dirt and waste materials. Now let's imagine a pre-corona classroom scenario where two Brahmins are walking down the street, engrossed in a debate over some professional issue. A street sweeper is discarding all types of refuse on the same road. Not paying attention to each other, the Brahmin bumps into the street sweeper. In such a scenario, the Brahmin has been polluted by the outcast. Hopefully the untouchable won't be punished, but the Brahmin would need to perform rituals to regain purity. Not necessarily for this stated scenario, but a useful substance for purification can be cow urine. Some of you might be saying, yuck, or how weird that sounds. The very categories of pollution and purity are relative constructs within religious traditions. Within Hinduism, the cow is highly revered and is considered more pure than even the Brahmin caste. On the purity pollution scale, cows are between the gods and the Brahmin caste. So any substance coming from the cow would be considered pure.